So in Illinois, only in the last 2 election cycles, governor and lieutenant governor candidates run as a team in the primary and then get nominated together and then run together in the general election. I actually think it's a really good reform, because what it means is you can run as a partnership. And that partnership can be carried into the office of governor and lieutenant governor, and that's really the only circumstance in which the lieutenant governor's position makes a lot of sense, however. And so I spent part of the summer thinking about who I wanted to run with and interviewing a series of different people. And one of the options who was on my short list was alderman from the northwest side of the city, from the 35th Ward, by the name of Carlos Ramirez-Rosell. And I could talk a lot about his strengths, of which there are plenty. I could talk some about his weaknesses, everyone has some. But it was an exciting partnership in certain respects. But there were some things that I wanted to check out. One thing that some people told me I should look out for was that he's a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. And my attitude was, I don't believe in guilt by association. I'm not going to participate in calling someone out because they're a socialist. I disagree with that. I think we should welcome people who are from active progressive groups. But I also wanted to make sure that I was comfortable with the positions taken by that organization, or at least acknowledge if we could talk about them. And so I read the organization's platform, and there's an awful lot there that I strongly agree with. And there's things that I have modest disagreements with, but could easily see both sides. But there was one set of issues that, because of my personal family background and kind of where I come from as a grandson of Holocaust survivors, it was important to me personally. It's, candidly speaking, not one of the most important issues for the state government, but it's an issue that was important to me personally, and that's about what's called the BDS, or Boycott, Divest, and Sanction movement, regarding the relationship between Israel and Palestine. I just had a personal discomfort with that, which I can get into if you guys find interesting, but my guess is not what you all want to talk about tonight. And so because of that, I asked him his position, and he said that he shared my position and Bernie Sanders' position, and was not in support of that movement. And then during the course of the first few days of the campaign, as we got a lot of questions about it, I think he did a lot of thinking and came to a different conclusion. And obviously I respect his right to change his mind, and I respect his position, but it was a division that I just didn't feel was going to be workable for the ticket, and so I regrettably had to part ways. And then move forward with another person who was under active consideration as a good friend and a close ally. Her name is Letitia Wallace. She's a state representative from Rockford, who I've fought with on a variety of issues. We fought on LGBT issues. In fact, we recently passed a bill into law that even Bruce Rauner signed, advancing LGBTQ justice. That she was the House sponsor, but I was the Senate sponsor. We fought side by side, especially on access to child care. She's someone who I know well and trust, someone with a commonality of values, and so we had to make that change, and we're moving forward full speed ahead. And you know, it was obviously a difficult situation, an uncomfortable situation, but I would say that Carlos is a strong progressive. We share a lot of values. He's a good person and a good ally on important issues, and obviously someone who I think has a very, very bright future in politics. So let me start here. I strongly oppose that bill in Congress. I think that bill is awful. I stand with the ACLU. I don't think criminalizing this kind of nonviolent protest is ever appropriate. I don't think it makes sense in this context. And let me, since you asked, let me expound on my views a little bit, since it sounds like there's some people here who care about these kind of questions. I am very, very passionately interested in justice for Palestinians. I am strongly in support of a two-state solution. In that situation, the Palestinian state needs to be free. That means politically free and economically free. The Palestinians are not living in that situation in the occupation right now, and that is unacceptable to me. I think when the Israeli government constructs settlements, that's a disaster. I think it's a justice disaster and a pragmatic disaster as well. And I would like to see the U.S. put more pressure on Israel to stop them from doing that, because I think it's very, very, very bad for peace when Israel does that. So I would not want anyone to come, and again, I'm sorry for warning, it's not what you're here to talk about, but I wouldn't want anyone to come here to come away with the impression that I take a one-sided view on this topic. I don't. And I have deep, deep, deep concerns for the well-being of the Palestinian and Israeli people. My concern about the BDS movement isn't that it should be criminalized, isn't that people should be forbidden from engaging in what is undeniably exercise of their First Amendment rights, first of all, but also a peaceful mechanism of engaging in political action. I do, however, respectfully believe it to be deeply wrong-headed. And there's a reason for that. I think it's patterned after one of the most important movements of this kind that we've seen as a species, and that was the movement against the apartheid regime in South Africa. And that was one of the great triumphs in human history, against one of the great evils in human history. And I think the analogy is pretty deeply wrong, with all respect. So one reason I think the analogy is pretty deeply wrong is that the goal there was to overthrow the apartheid government, which was fundamentally illegitimate. The goal here, in my opinion, should definitely not be to overthrow the Israeli government and replace it with a different type of state. The goal is to create a two-state solution, in which environment the Israeli government would continue to be an utterly legitimate state that we ought to have a strong relationship with. And so, to me, and obviously reasonable people can disagree about these things, I'm not saying that, again, I'm not trying to criminalize a form of protest, but to me a form of protest that is premised on this analogy that is so deeply wrong, both in terms of its assessment of the reality on the ground now, and in terms of its characterization of what the goal is, I find that really problematic. And so, my opposition to the BDS movement is not an opposition to justice for Palestinians. It's an opposition to the vision of Palestinian justice that I think undergirds that BDS movement. Because it's O'Hare Airport International Terminal at 6 o'clock at night on a Saturday in January with no notice. This isn't the Women's March that we got to plan from November 9th. This is just a thing that's being done on an impromptu basis on a Saturday afternoon. And so I went over and got in the car. As I was about to get in my car, I got an email from my brother who lives in New York. He was saying, hey, FYI, I'm on the subway riding up to JFK. There's a protest there tonight. I hope you guys are doing something in Chicago too. And I was like, wait a second, maybe something's happening here. And I got out of my car and I walked into the terminal, and it was just people as far as the eye could see. And let's be honest, we didn't know what in God's name we were going to do to help. We just had to be there. And we had to bear witness. And we had to speak. And we had to chant. And we had to demand a government that was reflective of what we know America to be, and especially what we know that America is supposed to be. And I remember I got there at the beginning, and eventually some other politicians showed up because they figured out the TV cameras were there. And then eventually the TV cameras left, and they left too, and then we just stayed until we made sure that everybody was released. Because there was a sense that nobody's going to solve these problems for us. There's no hero. There's no knight that's going to ride in on a white horse. There's no cavalry coming. The problems that have been created were created because we who have the value system that we have were too willing to sit back and be passive. And now there's this understanding across the state, and I presume across the country, that if we want the kind of country we know we're supposed to have, we're going to have to come together and rise up as a movement to go and get it. And that is something I've never seen. And that's something that our state needs so preposterously bad.